Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke and it is now the 19th of July. And as you can see, I've gotten a fringe trim, or actually I've done it to myself as usual, and it always looks kind of weirdly off because I have very curly bangs, actually. They're very, they tend to kind of pop up. And good morning, Melissa. And good morning, Sam. I was just talking just about how I just trimmed my fringe the other day, and it always kind of looks like it's off because the whole thing actually curls. So it's always annoying that first day. It's like it gets to a point where it annoys me that I have to cut it, and then when I only cut it like a very little bit, but it goes, and my hairdresser's always like, "Oh no, you could probably leave it longer," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, not when it's in my eyes." It looks great. I love it. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad it's. I don't know. I always feel like I'm fussing with it constantly. So I feel like it needs to be a little lighter in here too. I was looking at it. But anyway, yada yada. Who cares about that? It's just my hair, right? But yeah, so it's finally, as you can see by the fact that I'm wearing this sweater, it's actually a really nice day out. And we finally have a nice cool morning. How long this will last, I don't know. But surely we're not going to have too many more weeks of this because we will be heading into autumn soon. I always like to think of August 1st as the beginning of autumn because it's actually kind of the Celtic beginning of autumn. And while here it still might be really, very hot and humid, I do feel like, I feel like once we're getting into August, September's right around the corner. So I'm following all of those Instagram accounts that are like counting down how many weekends we have until fall. So it's kind of funny, but so interesting last couple of days. And the topic that I was actually going to discuss today, because it kind of came up yesterday in several conversations. There might be a couple of things, okay. One of the main things I want to talk about is I posted 2 more Azrael sessions yesterday. So I posted some of the channeling sessions, and I wanted to talk a little bit about, because now it's like, there was a lot of stuff that I talked about that I got a couple of months ago, and I think I started doing these live streams in the beginning of May, and here we are almost to the end of July, so May to June, June to July. Yeah, 2 months in, right? And I would get these various things that were connected to kind of what was going on more broadly. And really, the U.S. presidential election, you could say, oh, well, that's just the U.S., right? But, the results of that election could have a really big national impact, or international impact, really, depending on who gets in. So, so I think it's something a lot of people are watching very, very closely. And again, initially, even months ago, even back in January, I had people asking me, well, is it going to be Trump or Biden? And I've talked about this, and basically it said neither. So since that time, usually unbidden, today I actually did ask, because something did come up I always do these morning communications with Azrael, where we use the Enochian and we try to figure out what he's talking about, because the things I work with have a more limited vocabulary. So I think sometimes if I would just get busy and make some more cards that had some more words, but I've been busy with so many other things that I haven't had a chance to get back to it. But we use the Enochian cards, and it will tell me what order he wants the words in and what the sentences are and so forth. I get these things like that's first, that's second. So I have these messages that come in, and so I've been trying to do them every morning, and I think, as I've mentioned, I'm trying to write them down now, because I get myself confused about what was said and what wasn't said. Now, one of my friends had come over, I think it was a very late birthday celebration for her. Was it earlier in June? Maybe it was mid-June, mid to late June. And she had asked me, I was telling her about some of the predictions that I'd had. And so she started to ask me some very, very specific questions, like trying to get some very specific information. Like, okay, if it's not going to be Trump and Biden, who's it going to be? And I was just messaging her the other day. I said, did we talk about J.D. Vance? Because for some reason, I remember his name coming up. And she said, from what she recalled, that it was kind of more like a maybe. Like, it wasn't quite forthcoming about it. It was a definite no on some people, but it was kind of like a maybe. Like, it kind of had nixed all the other people, and it was kind of like on him. So it was interesting. So I was just trying to think about it, and also because of all this stuff that's going on now. Of course, they had that assassination attempt, and there is definitely. I mean, okay, I'm not a conspiracy theorist here. Okay, I do feel like there was, obviously somebody got shot and killed at that. So there was a very legitimate shooting going on there. But the message I've kind of got was that, and again, don't shoot the messenger here, and I'm not even saying I know that this is true or correct, but it was more or less to the effect of it was meant to be a stunt, but it got botched. And, because there was like a WWF style thing going on. Somebody I was talking to said, yeah, if you actually watch that film, he's got like a yellow cartridge when he holds his hand up. And that's what they use in wrestling to do fake blood on the side of the head, which is why at least some people I know are convinced that, it was not a real thing. Or that the injury's not real. It is certainly curious that we're not talking to any doctors and nobody will say anything at all about his ear. They're saying like, oh, it's like a big insect bite or something like that. So I don't know. I don't know whether there's a real injury or not. When I look at the bandage on his ear at the convention, I'm like, that's really odd. It doesn't look like it's actually, like, to me, if there was like a thing, there would be something around it. It wouldn't be, it looks almost like he's got like a piece of paper over it. Like almost like you're not going to look at my ear and see that it's actually not injured. It's more kind of the way it feels. But I don't know. I don't want to start those kinds of rumors and things like that because I don't know. Bottom line is whatever the FBI finds out is what the truth is going to be. But it did kind of come out, there's definitely something off about it. Let's just put it that way. There's something very weird about the whole thing. And yeah, I don't know. There's just something very, very odd about it. Undoubtedly there was a gun brought in and somebody did die who didn't deserve to in any way, shape, or form. And that's really what the tragedy is there. And whatever the whole thing around Trump is just very, very unclear, let's just say. At least from an objective, like even putting all those predictions aside, there just seems there's just something really weird about the whole thing. But nonetheless, putting all that aside, it did seem to indicate one of the things that came up to me this morning was that Vance was going to have a lot more influence than Trump going forward, and it said something about Biden kind of being. It was like a weird phrasing that he used, something like, let me see if I can find out what it is here. It was like, what was it? Iene gnetab dosig homo tia. Like the night, like somebody going out through the night window. It was something weird like that. So mind you, this is not talking about a death. I think it's just that somehow there's going to just be this kind of sudden shift from like one person to another. And I do think that there's secrets. It does seem to imply that there are secrets about Biden's health that people are not sharing. And that there may be this, there's stuff going on behind the scenes. Like there's going to be a window like an opening to get out, so to speak. So, and I don't know now who's going to replace him. That was another open question as to what that would be. Basically, what I think we did get when I did that reading was that it was going to probably be somebody from Congress, probably on both sides, and not necessarily Kamala Harris, because I didn't see any strong females there. People are talking like on the Democratic side, they're talking about Gretchen Whitmer, they're talking about Kamala Harris, and I think there was another female option as well. I'm trying to remember who it was, but in any case, I kind of got a no on it being a female. So, I don't know. I mean, to me, you would think like the VP pick would be the most obvious person, but for whatever reason, that's not what's being shown. In any case, the other thing I'd gotten about it was, the other thing he had said about Biden stepping down was he said, it's going to terrify a lot of people, but you're actually eventually going to be at peace with it. Because I guess whoever the replacement is going to be something that people feel they can solidly get behind. Okay. On the Trump side, it was interesting because it more or less implied that Vance is actually the one driving the agenda at this point rather than Trump. And that Trump is more like the personality and the face, and he seems to be more of the driving force. And they said the thing you have to be terrified of is greed. That was literally the message I got. You need to be terrified of greed. So again, what all this is going to mean ultimately, I don't know. Azrael, if you watch the actual sessions, and I know some people have, not, again, it's not something that's getting out there a lot. It is kind of new, and it's like my channel's not even at, that particular channel's not even at 1,000 followers yet, so it's not, when you get to 1,000 followers, that's when you can do a whole lot more with a YouTube channel. You can monetize it, you can have a community page, where you can actually send, you get these people who will say, hey, here's my message on my page. I can do that on Katonia channel. I can't do that on Transition Life Coaching. So I don't know. Those were the messages that I got, for better or for worse. Other messages I got were more about personal situations, so I wouldn't talk about those. But the messages that he seems to want to make public seem to be about, really, I feel like the overall tone of them is kind of like, what are you afraid of? Like, it's like things are shifting. I feel like almost like it's saying things are shifting and changing. And even though change, there's always a period of time where those changes are frightening because we don't know what they mean. We don't know if there's something we've been used to and we've been comfortable with, and it seems like that's going to go away. Then that period of change feels like it just feels, we don't know what it is, so we don't know if the change is going to be something that we're going to like, that we're not going to like, whether it's going to affect us positively, negatively. A lot of times I think we immediately worry that it's going to affect us negatively, unless we're just people who just love all kinds of change. And I mean, I suppose those people are out there, but I don't know too many of them. And honestly, I don't know, but he talks a lot about that. He talks a lot about big change. He also talks a lot about people who are alive, who are dead while they're alive. He talks a lot about that as well. Like if I go back and I kind of review, because I do review all of those communications before I put them up. Not because I actually don't edit anything out. It's me, whatever he says, he says. Through me in the kind of state that I'm in. People have asked me, somebody did ask me about whether or not it was painful for me to do those, because sometimes I make certain faces that look like I'm in pain. I think one of them I actually literally did have a headache while I was doing it, but it wasn't because of him. And a lot of times it's just, I feel like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's like there's waves of stuff that kind of come through my head, and sometimes it's a little bit jarring. I mean, I get that when I do Rahani too. I've noticed that when I do healing for people, especially if I hit an area that I think is, when I'm working mentally, especially if you're doing it remotely, you visualize where you're doing your work. And sometimes I will hit certain areas with people and I just kind of go, woo, like, you jump, because there's something there, like that seems to be a place where there's either a powerful resistance or there's a powerful need to release something. And generally I'll talk to the person after and they'll say, oh yeah, like they'll describe having a pain in an area where I had the jolt. So, so things like that, kind of can happen. And I think with these, it's like, I don't know, it's like there's like an opening in the top of my head. I can feel it. And sometimes I actually touch the top of my head because it's vibrating a lot, or my ear starts to vibrate a lot when I'm doing it. So I don't know. Like I said, channeling is something, I've tended to work through cards most of my life. I've tended to work through, occasionally, like I said, dream work and what they call dream incubation and stuff like that. But working through channeling in that manner is something, it's not new to me, but it's something that we're always a little less confident in it because we don't know what's coming through. A lot of times I feel like I have to say, well, is this just me making, like my mind trying to make up a story, or is this actually something coming through? There have been times when I've done the channeling. Sometimes I think probably for me there's certain times when I have had no intention of channeling, and then I will talk to people who have watched different live streams that I've done, not necessarily on this channel, but all of a sudden they'll be like, yeah, your voice just changed. And usually my voice doesn't change. Sometimes I feel like the voice is raspier, like it has a hard time coming out. Like it's breathier or raspier, but it still, I think, feel like it ultimately still sounds like my voice. So, and I feel like it's more like they're trying to like use the voice that you have rather than necessarily having their own voice. Although there was that one, Azrael 4 still blows my mind because on the bed behind me. And that was one that was not intended to be made public. That was just going to be a private one. And I have other private ones that I've done that are more about asking Azrael more about me and my stuff and stuff that's going on, and not, which doesn't need to be shared with the world. It's only the things that he wants to share more publicly. But that one was intended to be like that. But that was when I had actually fallen asleep for there's this weird stuff with time. I thought it was going to be like 3 minutes that I was asleep. I was actually only asleep 3 minutes, according to the time on the video. But I felt like I was asleep for like a half an hour. And then when I played it back, you hear that voice in my room when I'm asleep, and it's not my voice. It's not. My mouth isn't even open. It's not coming from me. Whatever that voice is. So that was just kind of like, ooh, and it does sound like the voice that I hear in my head. So it's kind of like, okay, it's just, yeah. I've had this conversation with a few people. When you tend to be an earth sign, when you tend to be somebody who's very grounded, it's like I'm always kind of struggling with this. Not because I think it's false, but because it's almost like you're thinking on not so much that it's false, but how could it be true? You know what I mean? We're kind of like, how does this work? You know? But I have to recognize, like all the other work that I do, that you're not necessarily, like even with energy work, people ask that question all the time. Well, how does that work? I mean, we can talk about it, but from a hard science standpoint, people will say, well, it doesn't make sense how that works, right? So it's always that kind of deprogramming from the way that rationality wants to come in, because a lot of times, and I think that's what stops a lot of people. Same, I completely agree. Cap, Sun, Taurus, Rising. Oh wow, you are super Earth. Yes, you're absolutely super Earth, and so it's kind of like when you get called into this kind of work, whatever form that takes. You always feel like, I don't know, like you're, like, it's like, why am I doing this? Shouldn't I be a nice accountant somewhere? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just something about the way that we are as earth signs, or I don't know, becoming a master gardener or something. You know, like you feel like there should be something you're doing that's a little more hands-on. But nonetheless, yeah, right. And it's funny because, this, like I said, this is just one of those things where, that's why I almost feel like I have to have, like I was talking yesterday about some of my experiences. I talked about my experiences with fairy and stuff like that. And it's like they almost have to happen in a way, I'm not going to call it dramatic. It's not like, whoa, like this big thing blew up in front of my face. But it's kind of like there has to be something to it that makes me go, okay, wait a minute. I can't just say, oh, that was my imagination. Oh, I thought this or I thought that. So, so I feel like there has to be other things. And I think one thing also about the channeling work that I do is that it's not something I wanted to do. It's not like I just said, right, I'm going to get in the business of channeling now. I mean, I've always been trying to develop my intuition, but it's not been like, I haven't necessarily like wanted to go into mediumship or anything like that. I've always kind of had mixed feelings about it, So the fact that happens, I just kind of go, seriously? Like, it's just, I don't know. It's just, but it's interesting because, I had like 2 or 3 just very, very, forthright events that said to me that, no, this is the direction that you're going and this is the work that you're doing. And by the way, you're working with angels. Sorry, I know for years you didn't do that, but now that's what you're doing. So, and it's fine. I don't have any, like if you had asked me that question a year ago, I would have been like, I remember being at the Rock Box in Marstown, and I had sometimes when we were waiting for clients to come or whatever, I would be sitting there. Gina was the manager. She'd be sitting at her desk, and I would be out there, and I might have a deck of cards in my hand, and we'd start to flip. And I had one deck. I had the Gateway Oracle, actually, which I sometimes will use in these readings. And I remember we were talking about something with Aunt, because she was the same as me. We were both, she's Aquarius, but I think she has like strong Capricorn also. And so she was just like, oh yeah, all that stuff. Like it was not her thing either. And literally, like as I was flipping cards, the card that flipped out was something like the angels are working with you or something like that. It was some card like that. And I held it up to her. I was like, are they freaking serious? And she just started laughing. She couldn't stop laughing. It was just, she's like, oh, doesn't it just figure that this is what comes up here, And good morning. So it was just like, yeah, it's just really funny how sometimes, I guess the point being is that you end up in areas of work that were not anything that you intended. Okay. It's not something that you wanted to do. It's not something you set out to do, and somehow you end up doing it. So, and I think that happens with a lot of people. I think even the founder of Rouhani was like that. She was like, why, I don't know what other kind of, I'm not clear about all the other kind of spiritual work Carol might have been doing before she started learning Rouhani, or before she had her vision. And she was another one. Now, when Rouhani came to be a thing, she had a vision of what they call him Lord Melchizedek. I mean, I think he's more akin to like the Egyptian Ra. And again, I'm never quite sure about these names, because when I think Melchizedek, I'm like, okay, we're talking about a priest in the Bible, like, but I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily who it's meant to be a reference to. It's basically like when you talk about the masters. Like Saint Germain is one I've always been very, I mean, I know a lot of people say, oh, the Violet Flame, Saint Germain. I was actually taught Archangel Zadkiel with the Violet Flame. Okay, so, well, at least that's what Neshla taught me. She didn't really mention Saint Germain. And I don't know. I don't know if she has a skepticism about him as well. And the only reason I'm skeptical is because he was sort of revealed by, like, Saint Germain was the domain of Elizabeth Clare Prophet. And what I know about Elizabeth Clare Prophet is she's not a person I would ever trust. So that's why I'm kind of, but then again, there are people who say that they've worked with that energy and that, yes, it's legit and and everything. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just skeptical of the messenger, I guess. I suppose like anything, messages can come through all kinds of people, but and I remember when I used to work for a book distributor, I cataloging a lot of, I guess her books had been republished, and a lot of them came through for cataloging, and I'm like, who is this woman? And but she was big around the time of what they called the harmonic convergence, which I tell people that's the time when I started reading and started doing stuff, and this was around 1987. So, because that was the first time I got my first deck of cartouche cards. And that was actually when I had started getting involved in, breaking away from Catholicism and getting involved in other things. So, and that was because, again, I was a good Catholic, okay? I was a good Catholic. And something else was pulling me away. And of course, dogmatically, when you're a Catholic, you believe, like anything that's not Jesus is the devil, right? So you have to really break out of that mindset, because, it's not one of these binary systems. It's either this or it's either that. It's not. You have to, you have to break, I call it fence jumping. You got to jump the fence. You got to break the wall to be able to get out of that space, because that space was very, very confining. And that kind of goes back to what Azrael said about people being alive and being dead at the same time. Because his whole thing is, like, people are afraid of death, but some people spend their whole lives just being dead because they don't do anything that's outside of the script. And whatever life they may be living is not the life that was meant for them, or it's not the gifts, the talents, it's not the things that make them, it's one of the oracles I use, one of those things that makes your heart sing. It's not one of those things that does that. We end up kind of doing things out of duty. And yes, we all have things we do out of duty. I'm not suggesting that doing that means you're not living your truth. But a lot of times people don't live their truth. I can't tell you how many times I've run into that with college students, people like that, who have just said to me, like, oh yeah, well, really, this is what I want to do. I really wanted to become a musician. I really wanted to be an artist. I love, like, they'll take classes with me. I love this stuff, but my parents said I really have to get a business degree. So people who kind of let their whole life be that, it's kind of like you're dead while you're alive. Or people who kind of maybe have certain spiritual experiences, and they're within a particular system that tells them that they're not allowed to have those experiences. So they just decide that those are experiences of the devil, and they push them away. And then they're always they're always just kind of end up having to, they become afraid. So they start blindly following dogmas and things because they're frightened of making any kind of an adjustment or any kind of a change, for fear of, I'm going to go to hell or, whatever. Actually in Azrael 6, I do specifically ask him about, even though I it's not, I don't take the concept of heaven and hell seriously. I'll just say that right now. Not because I don't think there's isn't something after death. I just don't think it takes that form. I think that's the way a lot of people want to conceive of it, because that's the way they're made to understand. Like, my relative has passed on, and excuse me, and they've gone to a better place or something like that. Like, I think a lot of people want to conceive of it that way. As it's been pointed out to me in the past, if somebody really wanted to talk about the concepts of heaven and hell, I mean, if you wanted to say, okay, what does the Bible say about it? Somebody had actually pointed out that the only group that actually conceives of heaven and hell exactly the way the Bible says are the Jehovah's Witnesses. And a lot of times we kind of look at the Jehovah's Witnesses with a healthy dose of skepticism, right? And again, I'm not going to diss anybody who's decided that's the path they want to take. But they do tend to be very much, yes, we have the truth about things. And I guess if you're going to give them a point for anything as far as that goes, it's like, yeah, they do actually espouse the literal biblical view of that. However, that whole concept, it's what my book is about, really. I don't get as extensively into heaven and hell, but I do talk a lot about afterlife. And that was not always the concept of afterlife, and there is a way in which that concept developed over time. It took from the start of Christianity to about the Middle Ages, where we're going to say around the 1200s. So we're talking like a good 1,000-year chunk of time before you have a really strong theology of heaven and hell. It wasn't there before. It develops over time in a system that is actually meant to be not just religious but political. So you have to take all of that into context. And a lot of times people have actually said that psychologically the idea of hell is what keeps some people from doing bad things. And a lot of people will say that that's the justification. That's why you must learn religion when you're growing up, because if you need to learn about, because otherwise you won't have any morals. I hear that a lot. My mother says stuff like that. And I'm like, well, that isn't necessarily true. I know plenty of people who have been raised as atheists who have perfectly good ethics and morals and don't need a threat just to keep them from being moral people. And that's just the thing. And so Azrael does talk about it, and what he said to me, and he'll say to me, and I was watching this one recently, he says, and you know this to be, he says, and you know this, and you know this. He'll keep saying it to me because he knows that I have had dreams or visions of some of this stuff. And he's like, you know this. And what he talks about, he said, what people think of as heaven and hell, I said, is there a heaven or hell as people conceive of it? And he said, not as people conceive of it. And he keeps saying, there's a place of ancestors. But the implication there was almost that people are they're like, the place of ancestors is the memory of who you are. So me as Brigid Burke, okay, when my time comes and I'm no longer in this world, however people remember me is going to be part of that place of ancestors. Like that identity that I have, me doing this or whatever else I've done in my life, how people ultimately end up remembering me is going to be part of the essence of that place of ancestors, right? And it's, and again, it's not a bad place. It is kind of a I want to say what I've seen of it, and again, just because I've seen it, my mind's conceived of it a certain way doesn't mean this is how it is. But I kind of conceived of it as a place where there's almost like, it's almost like it's like late fall-ish in the way that it looks. It's like the vegetation looks like it's kind of, it's like reminds me, it's like the brown vegetation, like the harvest vegetation. And it's almost like I was seeing like mountains and rivers and things. And it was like, it wasn't an unpleasant place, but it wasn't like a place full of spring flowers and stuff like that. And that's what he had called the place. And that's what I heard. This is the place of the ancestors. Now, again, that's just a mental conception. That doesn't mean that that's exactly what it is. I imagine that the truth of it is probably a lot weirder than that. What the heck? You had the same? Yeah. Okay. So you and I both were on the same page with that. Yeah. That's what I saw. And he said to me that really, and again, it goes back to quantum ideas of consciousness, that we exist across the spectrum. So it's kind of like, this is the face I put forward to you. This is one mask. When that one falls away, then there's another one. You turn your attention and you're living in another one, and another another timeline, another dimension. And you can shift timelines within one lifetime, but it's also about where you are, I'm Brigid Burke, but I'm also thousands of other people across what we would think of, because we talk about past lives, right? But it's not so much even that they're past. It's just they're somehow existing simultaneously, but there's no way we can conceive of that. So it's kind of like we focus on one thing at a time. And then when we die, this is why the ancients talked about having different parts of the soul, right? You have the psyche, you had the eidolon, and then the Egyptians have like 6 or 7 different parts to the soul. I want to say I wrote about 5 of them, but I still think there's more than people conceive of. So it's, because the idea is that, there's a part of you that's kind of like that they call the shade or the memory. I also think that's what, when a lot of people see ghosts, that's what they see. They see the impression of that person, the energetic impression of that person. But the actual essence of that person, if you want to say, goes on, it has been going on infinitely. Okay, however long, and whether that ends or not, I don't know. But it goes infinitely across time, space, different places, maybe on Earth, maybe not on Earth. It's just, there's a lot of you that exists. More, if you ever think about there's something called the Vishvarupa in Hinduism. And the Vishvarupa, I have a picture of it on my Patreon, but if you ever look it up, it's like Vishva, Vishvarupa. That should get you close. It's a spelling that's going to be similar to that. There's different ways to conceive of that in English or in Roman letters, okay? But it's, if you look it up, and if you look it up under images, when you see the image of Vishvarupa, you'll generally see this deity that's got like 1,000 heads. And when you hear it talked about in Hindu scripture, the Vishvarupa is something that is like, it's literally like it's when the gods, or sometimes like in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says to Krishna, he says, I want to see your true form. And Krishna says, okay. And he shows him the Vishvarupa, and he's like, okay, can I not see that now? It's terrifying. Not because it's evil. It's terrifying because your mind literally can't handle this idea that you've got like thousands of heads and like thousands of explosions, like fires going on and so forth. And it just, the way that the mind tries to wrap itself around that is just, it's like literally like you're gonna lose it. Like, no, like, never mind, just go back to your nice form that you had before. And again, it's not that the other form is bad. It's just not something we can comprehend. And so that's the same with us. I mean, I think, from what he's saying, we exist across the spectrum. And he said, you should really just kind of be here and being alive. But a lot of times, we either focused on what, on what we think others are going to approve of us being, or we're focused on all the stuff that we don't have. And it just seems to be, and a lot of that just comes out of our cultural mindset, that somehow we're not allowed to enjoy stuff. And he's just kind of like, you're here, you look at all the nice stuff you've got. Like, hey, how about looking at all, because I told him, I said, do you have any positive messages? He's like, yeah, like you've got great things. There's great things ahead. Like, look at that. Don't live a life kind of like small and in terror all the time, because there's lots of great things. You participate in all of it, So it's interesting. Let's see what our reading says for today. This guy wanted to pop off. Yeah, there we go. Friendliness. Kind of being out there. Okay, so what do we have here? Yeah, oh yeah. This is funny. This is coming up. Okay. So we have our center card is the Master. Okay, once again. Now again, we're not specifically talking about Osho here, but we are talking about the idea of the Master. So we were talking about guidance the other day, right? And so these are our guides. These are the ones that are guiding us. This is that principle that's guiding us, that knows who we are maybe better than we know who we are, or maybe can see it better, because again, it's really hard to see yourself. And it's that principle that guides us towards what is authentic for us, what is right for us, okay? Whether people literally have a guru or not it's really irrelevant. I mean, the guru can be your own inner authority and inner self, right? It doesn't have to be a literal guru. But there's a guiding principle there. And yeah, there's the miser card here. You see this woman, she's holding on to all these jewels. She's got this wall that's built up. And it's just the idea that we don't want to go outside certain confines. We want the walls established for us. We want somebody to tell us, no, This is who you are, this is what your limits are, and this is what you need to do to be safe in this world and acceptable to whatever group, right? It's the thing that makes us say, I'm not going to share because, I'm scared of losing what I have and I have to hang on to it like this. And as a result, people not only close off in terms of, maybe money and things like that, but people also close off their hearts. That was a conversation. I did a lot of Rouhani yesterday. I did several sessions yesterday. And one of the things that sort of came up as a topic of conversation is people who will sometimes have Rouhani and not feel it. Like, let's just say they want to work on the heart space. And I say to them, and I may be working, and I may feel that whatever is working on them is working very heavily on the heart space. And they'll say to me, I didn't feel anything in the heart space. And one of my clients said to me, sometimes that could just be because people I think are naturally have their hearts closed off because we're afraid, and actually in the Rider Waite version of this card, you still have a guy who's got a big pentacle that he's holding over his heart, and he's got his feet on top of two other ones, it's like there's this closing off because of I feel like I have to keep what's mine because if I share it, then I'm not going to have it because nobody's going to give me nothing's ever going to come back to me, right? But that's not true. I mean, things when we share, that's what they'll say. In order to be full, that sometimes you have to be empty, right? And the external feeling, here's the breakthrough, right? That's the breakthrough. This is the justice card. Knowing what one's truth is, but this is kind of that internal sense of like, yeah, but I don't think I can do this. I don't think I'm going to have enough. No, I'm not, I can't put myself out there. It's too much. I'm not that kind of a person. It's like saying, no, you are. You aren't, as I've said to people, you are enough, but really you're more than enough. It's not just that you are you're we tend to make ourselves very, very small. And I think there's kind of like, you're bursting out, your light is actually brighter than that. You're bursting. Here's the wall. Here's you bursting out of that wall, right? Okay. It's that kind of a thing. And you are a light unto yourself. Okay. This is the aloneness card, but it doesn't mean that you're lonely. It means that you are a light unto yourself. So ultimately we have others around us, but we are each our own individual light. And I think that's kind of the thing that's being brought up here as well. It's kind of like, I'm feeling it back here. It's like he's saying, you're all light. Like, why are you walking around like you're, like you have to like hide in darkness? Like, you're all light. Like, why are you walking around like that? Basically it comes across as more like, that the angels are puzzled by us. Like, why do you do that? Like, yeah, you all do that. Like, why do you do that? Like, it's that kind of a thing. And ultimately, yeah, we have the celebration card. This is the three of cups. I mean, you got three women dancing in the rain. My friend calls this the Maynard card. She's like, hey, get out there and enjoy yourself. Celebrate with others. Don't yes, there's this idea of aloneness. You are a light, but so is everybody around you. So celebrate, right? There's this element here of celebration and rejoicing. And I think that's what the Master card, that's what the guides are trying to move us towards, is like, hey, there's no need for you to live your life looking around every corner, worried. And yes, we have been wounded in the past. We're all wounded in the past. Every single person comes in with, it's like being dealt a hand of cards. Some people have, a good hand. Some people maybe not so great of a hand. They may have to give something up, throw something in, and then take something in order to get something else to see if they can refigure the hand. So there's the hand you've been dealt, but then there's also, it's a little bit more complex than that. There's also all the resources you have. And a lot of times it's kind of saying, not only do we want to work on clearing out those wounds, but we also, and trying to transform that energy into something that we can work with. But I think it's also about the way in which we, we can look, a lot of times there's gifts that we all have that we look at and we go, yeah, but I can't do anything with that. Nobody's interested in that. I can't make money at that. Like, we have that kind of a thing. And the question is, well, have you tried? Do you know that you can't? Or we're worried, like, okay, I'm an academic. people have said to me, do you not worry that doing this kind of work is going to take people not take you seriously as an academic? I'm like, well, if they don't, they don't. I'm not on a tenure track. That's another thing. If you go on tenure track, then it's like, okay, you're like beholden to some advisor or some administrator, and you have to publish, and you have to, know the right people and network with the right people, and you cannot say anything that you really think. You have to toe the party line until you are tenured, and then you can say whatever you want. But it's there's this, and then you're untouchable. Then you can, it's almost the reverse situation. But there's this whole career where you have to be, and I've seen academics like this, even in England especially, like they're terrified because like that they say, if you have one idea that's outside of the mainstream, then no, we can't have that, and it's only kind of backed up in the realm of evidence. But it's like, well, I mean, maybe we need some new ideas and not just, it's good to learn what's already there, but then there's no need to recycle the old endlessly either. I mean, it's, some of this material may have a different inflection for the time we live in now, and maybe you need to update things. And some people really resist that because they say, no, that's not right. That's not what it was. But, it's the way, and so you worry socially. That's what I mean. You worry like, okay, I want to have this kind of career, but if I want to this is why I'm not a full-time professor somewhere. Okay, and the place that I teach, I mean, it is one of the few schools that teaches religious studies, but in a liberal arts way and not in a theological way. But also, it's just I graduated from that department, so they know me. They know, and the people who were there had spoken for the kind of things that I could do, which is where I got. It was one of my mentors who said, "Yeah, we want to hire her," and so yeah, and I have a good reputation. I mean, students seem to like what I do. I get good, you occasionally get a crappy evaluation because, whatever. But for most of them, people say no, that people feel that they learned a lot in this class and they got a lot out of it. So you just keep doing that and you keep your job. But that's the thing too, because a lot of people seem to feel like they have to cater to the students now. Like, oh, I can't do anything to upset the students. I'm like, that's another game that has to be played. Academia is a game to be played. But it's the same with a lot of things. But that's why I said I won't. People say to me, why don't you go for a full-time professorship? I said, because that's all the crap that goes with it. I literally would have to shut all this down, disavow all of it, and say that I don't do any of it. And I'm like, hey, that's not true. And so I would rather work part-time doing that kind of work, maybe do it in some other kind of context, and then open my own school and do it my own way. So yeah. So anyway, it's just figuring out what to do with what you have. I have an undergraduate degree in religion. People have told me, "What are you going to do with that?" And I was like, "Well, actually, I've done quite a lot with it, quite frankly." But it's and I didn't become a minister. This isn't vocational training. So anyway. That seems to be the main message. I wanted to talk a little bit about what seemed to be coming out politically. I might talk a little bit more about that as I get my thoughts more organized on that, because I kind of want to go through and see what's actually being said. And it's not because I'm trying to make any prophecies or predictions myself specifically about that, but just because I really want it out there in a fashion to be able to say, okay, this is what I was getting. Let's see ultimately what this means, if it actually is a prediction or if it's, a lot of whatever, I don't know. But that's one of the reasons that I bring it up periodically, because I want to show what has been coming up, and that's why I've started really writing a lot of this down too, because I feel like I need to, I'm interested to see. It's like anything you would do in a good intuitive development class, which is where you keep records of what you're thinking, even if you think what you're thinking is weird or ridiculous. Sometimes people do that, like, oh, that can't be right. But then later on they'll find out, like if they are trying to read a person and they'll go, well, I saw this and this is dumb. Obviously this means nothing. And they're like, oh no, actually it does mean something. And it was the most important thing. So you learn not to discount those things just because your rational mind says, that doesn't seem right. But, so anyway, yeah. And of course, as I said before, not looking to spread conspiracy theories, because obviously, there's an FBI, DOJ investigation on the whole assassination attempt and what that's ultimately going to mean. That's really the information you should pay attention to there. But I really was just kind of pointing out that there are some oddities, and that the angels have pointed out the fact that there's some oddities. Although the one other message I got was that Donald Trump did get some kind of a warning, and it was not like the assassination attempt wasn't the warning. It's like I don't know if he had a dream, if he had something, he had some kind of a warning, but I don't know that he's fully absorbed what that warning is. I mean, I think he sort of did initially, and then I feel like he didn't after that. So, because that's what I got. They said, no, he got, because they're basically telling him, like, hey, dude, don't put yourself forward as a messiah, is basically. And again, I don't care whether people like him or want to vote for him or don't want to vote for him. They're basically saying that's the other message of Azrael. There are no messiahs. Don't be looking for the single person who's going to come and save you. Like, that's just, it's not going to happen on either side of the aisle. So, or in anybody's politics in anybody's country. So, anyway, so those were the things that came up for me. So anyway, thanks for listening today. It's a little bit of an odd, well, maybe not an off topic for what I do, but just, that kind of got in my mind this morning that I wanted to talk about that a little bit. So anyway, I hope all of you have a great day. It's Friday, so yay, if you're working, maybe this means that you'll come into the weekend. Oh, you're welcome, Melissa. And and then I will, I'll be back obviously tomorrow, unless something changes. Full moon seems like it's going to be a little weird, so we'll see what that turns out to mean. And so I'll see you all tomorrow. Take care.